Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Salvatore, and today I'm honoured to be joined by former Secretary of State for the Environment and Secretary of State for Employment, as well as Home Secretary from 1993 to 1997, as well as leader of the Conservative Party and leader of the opposition as well. It's Lord Michael Howard. Thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
Thank you. First of all, Lord Howard, we've been in a few lockdowns over the past year. So how have you been doing?
Well, I can't complain. I've been much more fortunate than very many people. I haven't had any illness, although I have had close members of my family affected by COVID. They've recovered, and I've been more fortunate than very, very many people.
And you joined the Conservatives when you were quite young. Why did you choose to join the Conservative Party?
Well, it's quite difficult to remember. It's a long time ago. I grew up in South Wales in a very solidly Labour stronghold, and my Cambridge. I had a lot of friends when I was at Cambridge who were in the Labour Party, and they said the obvious explanation for my becoming was that I was a natural rebel, and if you grew up in South Wales, the only place to go if you were a natural was the Conservative Party. But it probably had more to do with the fact that my parents were keepers. So I had an early, they weren't Conservatives as it happens, but I had an early introduction to hard work and private enterprise and the importance of all those things. So I was never drawn to socialism, and I was never drawn, therefore, to the Labour Party. And I suppose the realistic alternative was the Conservative Party.
Brilliant. And you graduated from the University of Cambridge in 1962 with a degree in law, and then was called to the bar 2 years later. So what experiences in law helped you in your political career? And can you give any advice to an aspiring lawyer like myself, for example?
Right. Well, I think being a lawyer has advantages and disadvantages when it comes to the House of Commons. If you treat the House of Commons as you would a court of law or a judge, you're not likely to get very far because it's a radically different kind of audience. On the other hand, the experience of mastering a brief certainly stood me in good stead, especially when I was a minister, when you have to absorb a lot of information, not in order to plead a cause, but in order to make a decision. So the experience of mastering a brief was very helpful. The experience, the advocacy is very different. As to what you should do if you want to succeed as a lawyer, you've got to work very hard. You've just got to work hard and apply yourself. And of course, I don't know what sort of a lawyer you want to be. The word covers a multitude of different occupations, really. There's a barrister who practices in the criminal courts has very little in common with a city solicitor who specializes in the finer points of company law. They're very different. They're both lawyers, but they're very different.
Mm-hmm. I personally would like to be a solicitor, but yeah.
Right.
And so going on to your parliamentary career, you first stood for Parliament in 1966. So what sparked your interest in politics, and why did you want to become a member of Parliament?
It really all happened at Cambridge, because I was part of a group of people who subsequently became known as the Cambridge Mafia.
Yes.
Ken Clarke, Norman Lamont, John Gummer, Leon Britton, Christopher Tugendhat. There were a lot of us there at the same time. We were all very interested in politics. We all wanted to be MPs. I haven't mentioned Norman Fowler, I should have done. And we're still friends, although we haven't always agreed with each other. We're still friends. And it was at Cambridge that my political ambitions really started to grow.
Thank you. And you, of course, served in government under Margaret Thatcher. So what was it like to serve under Margaret Thatcher, as you did so in many positions?
Well, she was absolutely inspirational, and I'm a great admirer. But she put you on your mettle. I mean, you had to work hard and be off of your brief. I remember one of my early encounters with her when I was a minister was when she asked me to come to her room at the back of the chamber of the House of Commons for a late night whiskey. And I had the whiskey, but I didn't enjoy the conversation all that. Her first question was, I was responsible for a bill called the Financial Services Bill, and she said, I've been reading the guide to the bill, and there's a footnote on page 93 which I don't quite understand. And I thought I'd prepared to the hilt for that meeting, but I had no idea what the footnote on page 93 meant. So I don't think I made a very good impression.
And you was Secretary of State for the Environment under John Major from 1992 to 1993. And now the environment has become an even more prominent issue. It's important then, it's important now. So how well do you think the UK is doing on a global stage to combat climate change, and how important will COP26 be for this in November this year?
Well, I think we're doing very well. In many respects, we're a world leader. And our emissions since 1990 have decreased very considerably without at all affecting our economic growth, which was what some of the doomsayers said would happen. And we've set very ambitious targets too, which if we achieve, will show the way. Of course, globally, we are quite small emitters because our percentage of global emissions is quite small. But I think we can lead by example. And to answer the second part of your question, COP26 is of immense importance, the utmost importance, because this is a challenge that the world has to take seriously.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And do you think this current government is taking it seriously?
Oh, I do. Yes, no question. The goals, the targets which have been set are very challenging, very testing.
Absolutely. Hopefully we can reach those targets and set an example as well.
Exactly.
And John Major, former Prime Minister, he made you Home Secretary in 1993, and you served as Home Secretary until 1997 when Labour won the general election. Recorded crime fell by about 17% during your tenure as Home Secretary, very successful. So what was it like to hold one of the great offices of state, and what was the biggest challenge you faced?
Well, it was very hard work indeed, and it was very challenging. And the biggest challenge I faced was that I changed the whole culture of the Home Office. When I arrived, the first thing I was told was that crime had gone up by an average of 5% a year for the last 50 years, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's going to continue to happen. And they genuinely believed that nothing could be done about it. So I had to really change the culture, and that was a formidable challenge. But I think, with the help of many others, we did manage to change the culture, and we did turn it round.
Absolutely. And then after that, in 2003, you won the Conservative Party leadership contest. And so that then made you leader of the opposition. What was that experience like? And how was it facing Tony Blair in Prime Minister's questions every week?
Well, very intimidating. Tony Blair was, I think, the master of Prime Minister's questions. I don't think any of those who've come after him or who went before him have been as good at Prime Minister's questions as he was. He was brilliant. So it was quite difficult facing him across the dispatch box. In fact, now sometimes when I look at Prime Minister's questions, I wonder how on earth I ever managed to do it, and whether I was actually ever there doing it. So it was a great challenge. Obviously, I failed because the only objective of a leader of the opposition is to become Prime Minister. And if you don't become Prime Minister, you've failed. But we did make quite a bit of progress in the 2005 election. And I like to think I established a platform from which David Cameron could go on and win in 2010.
Absolutely. And you've just touched on the 2005 general election. You was party leader and you gained 33 seats, which is incredible. But do you think that you could have done anything differently?
Oh, I'm sure there are lots of things I could have done differently, lots of things. Whether they would have made much of a difference to the result, I don't know. It was a very difficult election for any opposition because despite my warnings, everybody thought the economy was in good shape, which turned out later it wasn't, but everybody thought it was. Unemployment was low, interest rates were low, mortgage rates were low. It's quite hard for an opposition in those circumstances to make a lot of headway.
Mm-hmm. And as a party leader as well, you maintained good discipline within the party, which wasn't seen for many years within the Conservative Party. How did you manage to do that?
Well, I think I was quite fortunate in the timing as far as that was concerned, because I was the fourth leader in 6 years. And I think those 6 years were marked by dissent and division and recrimination. And I think people realized by the time I came along that they'd got to get their act together, and they were fed up of all that division. And the fact that I was elected without a contest helped. And so I think all those things came together. And there was, as you rightly say, at least for the first 18 months until after the election, we did maintain unity. Of course, after the election, when people were involved in electing my successor, it was rather different, but that was only to be expected.
And just before you stepped down as party leader, you promoted the likes of David Cameron and George Osborne to shadow cabinet positions. How much of an influence did they have in changing the party to where it is now?
Oh, enormous. I think they deserve great credit for what they did. We had an image problem after 1997 of quite considerable proportions, and I don't think I really significantly managed to change it, but they did.
You were a massive help in that as well. So, and
well, I think they deserve the credit.
And moving on to more of a topical issue. So obviously we've had Brexit, but we haven't actually seen the full impact of that yet, obviously because of the pandemic. But what does the future hold, in your opinion, for Britain on a global stage?
I think the future is very bright. I'm encouraged by what's happened since Brexit. I mean, you've only got to look at the vaccine program and the extent to which we have performed compared with Europe. And we'd have been in the same place as they are if we'd still been members of the European Union.
True, yeah.
I think so far things have gone very well. Not everything. I do think that the Northern Ireland Protocol does need some considerable work done to make it function effectively. But on the whole, I think things are going well. And I think global Britain has a great future.
Mm-hmm. And we've had the local elections in May where the Conservative Party did very well, but the Labour Party not so well, and also losing the by-election in Hartlepool. What do you think went wrong for the party?
Well, I don't know. I hesitate to offer other parties any advice or explanation for their ills. I think they're in a difficult position. I mean, I think, Jeremy Corbyn, I think, was unelectable and did a lot of damage to the Labour brand. And as our experience showed back after 1997, once your brand is damaged, it takes quite a long time to repair that damage. And I think that's the problem that they face.
Absolutely.
I think at some point, I don't think we're seeing the end of the Labour Party. There have been, I think I worked out very few, I can't remember, but I think only 4 elections since 1945 which I think were transformational. And in order to have a transformational election, you need two things. You need a discredited government and a credible opposition.
Mm-hmm.
And sooner or later, I hope it won't be for a very long time, but sooner or later, this government will become discredited. And if there's a credible opposition in place at the right time, they'll win.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope it's not for a very long time.
And do you think having a weaker opposition makes there more of like an issue for mistakes because they aren't scrutinising the government as well as they could be?
Well, there's no shortage of scrutiny in our system. You have scrutiny from the media, you have scrutiny as a government from your own backbenchers. There's no shortage of scrutiny. I think in theory and in principle, a strong opposition is good for democratic government, but there's no shortage of scrutiny, even if the opposition isn't at its most strong.
Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of young people like myself are getting into politics, which is great now, a new generation. But how do the politicians in Westminster, how do they engage with younger people?
Well, I'm no longer in the House of Commons, so I'm not sure that I know the answer to that. I don't think we in the House of Lords engage very much with young people. We probably should. I suppose social media ought to make it easier. I'm not a great fan of the influence that social media has had on politics, but one of the things which it could be used for is to make it easier for members of parliament to get in touch and other politicians to keep in touch with the younger generation. And I dare say some of them are trying to do that.
And you was an MP for 27 years and led a very successful political career. So finally, have you got any advice for somebody who would like to get into politics?
Get stuck in. Go and work with your local association or a neighbouring association. If your seat's a very safe one and there are marginal ones nearby, perhaps go to one of the marginal ones. Don't be too snooty about the tasks that you are asked to undergo. Be prepared to get your hands dirty, roll up your sleeves, and work hard. Work hard for the party. And if you do that, and you've got the other qualities that are necessary, you'll be recognised and you'll be able to press on.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of the podcast. Thank you for joining me today, Lord Howard. It's been an absolute honour to have you on. You've been brilliant.
Well, thank you very much. And I wish you every success in your career, both in the law and in politics.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye and good luck.